Yes. Notre Dame at Michigan State, ABC, Saturday night. Marco, what should bettors be looking at?
Can Notre Dame, with the new coaching staff, bounce back off their first tough loss? And it was a gut-wrenching loss. I think they do, and I'll tell you the reasons why. Michigan State, they haven't played anybody yet. They're undefeated, but they played, two teams that they barely broke a sweat against. Notre Dame, even sitting at 1-1, has played two good decent teams. They opened up with Purdue and then had a Michigan team, another Big Ten school. Actually, both games were Big Ten schools, but they had just an explosive offense. And even though Michigan went up and down the field Saturday, Notre Dame kept their composure for that game, lost their starting quarterback after the first series, got hit with a concussion, came back late in the game, but they stayed within it, found a chance to win a game that they were totally dominated in, took the lead with 2 minutes left in the game, and then unfortunately the heroics.
All right, so we're getting too detailed. Notre Dame last week's performance increases their standing in your eyes?
They do for me because he didn't lose. This team.
No, I don't. Yeah, Notre
Yes.
Dame's better this week than you thought last week.
Yes.
Even though they didn't cover the spread.
Even though they didn't cover the spread, they showed me character at different points in that game.
Okay. Now, we talked about in the Kansas game that for a new coaching staff, the first road game there's a lot of variables associated with that makes the newness of the coaching staff even more of a detriment. That would seem to be the case here with Notre Dame. First game on the road for a new staff.
It would be, in regards to the Kansas game, it was a team also making a short trip because they were going on a Friday, so they lose a day.
Yeah, but we're not talking about who's more extreme, the Kansas first-year coaching negative versus Notre Dame. We're saying let's identify this as because here's the thing we can't forget. You can like a side. There might be 20 variables that are pro Notre Dame in this game and 14 that are pro Michigan State. And when you add them all up, you like Notre Dame enough to make a play on them. Mm-hmm. What we don't want to do is whitewash the variables on each side. So would we agree that Notre Dame having a first-year coach, the first road game is a negative?
Yes.
All right. So, again, you're adding all these factors up to come to your projection. We want the viewers out there and the listeners to decide on these variables for themselves and add it up for themselves. What is it? Because they might have perspectives on this game. We don't. That's the whole point, acquiring these perspectives. Now, Notre Dame, 3 of 13 ATS. They're the poster team for an overrated premium team, marquee, that you pay an extra price because of the rabid fan base. I don't think I've ever played Notre Dame, to be honest. I always fade them. Not every game I fade them, but if I bet them, I fade them. 3 of 13 speaks that it's been working. You like them enough here to go against that?
Yeah, and I'm bucking an even bigger number. You talk about, the 3 of 13. I'm guessing that's their last X number of games. I'm going to give you a stat that Michigan State has dominated Notre Dame.
2 of 13.
I have 12-3 the last 15. Michigan State is against Notre Dame. So this is a series that Michigan State has played them well. Again, and I hate to make it a recurring theme, but again, you got to go back and look at the games, look at what the lines were, and look at what you're dealing with here. In a lot of those games, Michigan State and Notre Dame's going to be a favorite in most of those games. Last year, they were a 10.5-point favorite at South Bend. And if these two teams have a history of, playing dogfights in, close games and whatever, the dog's going to cover. And if Notre Dame's always the favorite, they're not going to cover. Now you've got Notre Dame. They're a dog here. So we're getting the points. I think Michigan State's a little bit counterfeit. I may be proved wrong after this week because this is their first test.
Now, let's think about this. And I have a point actually to back up your Notre Dame side in a second. Michigan State has played 2 games. None of them have been super tough. Maybe they've gone vanilla somewhat. Clearly, they've been thinking about Notre Dame's played 2 tough games. no way were they thinking about Michigan State before the Michigan game.
No.
So you would think that 3 tough games to start the year, first road game against a team that's at home that hasn't really played tough games would be a big advantage to Michigan State. Could it be that the reason that Michigan State has only lost 2 of 13 ATS, and you've got a slight variation on that, could be they take this game more seriously? Is Notre Dame is one of the bigger games, certainly their biggest non-conference game most year, and for Notre Dame it's one of many big games that they have. And if so, would that change this week when Notre Dame's off Michigan? It'd be hard to imagine that they are more concerned about this game. Isn't there a motivational edge for Michigan State?
There's always going to be a motivational edge for Michigan State playing Notre Dame.
Maybe that's why they're 13 or 11-2.
But coming off the loss and the fact that they almost lost last year in South Bend is a 10.5-point dog, they're going to be focused. I mean, it's another angle that I like. Whenever teams play series, every year, if the home team is a big favorite and they barely win the previous year, and then they're playing at the other opponent's site the following year,
okay,
and it's a small line, I am going to look to the team that barely won, because the public's going to look at that and say, well, Jesus, if they only lost, and no pun intended to Notre Dame there with the Jesus reference, but if they only lost by 3 at Notre Dame, they should come back home this year and beat them easily.
Now, you do that in college basketball, but it's usually intra-season. Do you find it to be just as applicable? I mean, what percentage of the public's looking at last year's line?
Well, people should.
People should do a lot of things, but you're talking about that last year's results are going to have an effect on this year's public perception, and I'm questioning it. I think that's probably more valid in basketball. It might be valid with the marquee teams like Notre Dame, but in general, I mean, we talked about in the KU Southern Miss game, how many people are really thinking about last year's performance matchup between these two teams?
Not as much as the basketball, because the basketball is in season, but I would say maybe 20% of your handicappers will go back and look at that and look at the lines. I feel it's something that should be a part of your daily checklist when you're doing
No doubt. Real quick, Michigan State coach D'Antonio was at Cincinnati directly before Kelly. Did you know that?
I do
yes
believe.
Or no?
Now that
yes
you say it,
no?
I remember.
Right.
I remember it, yes.
I don't think you knew that. And now here's the thing. Kelly comes in, all the game tape he's watching is from D'Antonio's team, getting ready for his team. Clearly that's going to be an advantage, I think, for Notre Dame. That coach can be very familiar with the way D'Antoni does stuff, watching years of tape, getting ready for that job. That said, you beat me for a nickel last week. And I'll be paying you off during your best bet segment. Let's go up with the head-to-head there, Dustin. I'm challenging you on that. Well, you got a projection on this. Give us the projection.
I've got Notre Dame winning the game 27-21.
Okay. I'm ready to take Michigan State for my nickel back.
Bring it on. I've hit the first 2 games involving Notre Dame this year. I'm undefeated with Notre Dame.
That's a yes?
That's a yes. That's an emphatic yes.
All right. Now it's your turn to join the conversation. In the comments section, you can talk to Marco and me. And next up, we're moving to the NFL.